Hi everyone, welcome to Be Like Christ. Today we are having a Bible study through 2 Samuel chapter 9, hopefully in under 5 minutes. There's only 13 verses in this chapter, so I think we can do it. There's a link down in the description where you can get the PDF that you're seeing up on the screen. It's free. There's also a link to Amazon where you can buy physical books that contain the outlines for the books of Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy right now, but more will be coming in the future. So check that link to see if any new ones have come out. 2 Samuel chapter 9, when did the events happen? David became king over Judah in about 1055 BC. He ruled over Judah for about 7.5 years before becoming king of all of Judah and Israel. Slide on down there to our character section at the bottom of the page, and who are our main characters for this chapter? We've got David, he's the king of Israel and Judah. We've got a guy named Mephibosheth, who we were introduced to very briefly previous to this. Mephibosheth was the son of Jonathan, who was David's best friend, and we're told that he was a lame man. He couldn't walk, his legs didn't work properly. Then we have Ziba. Ziba was a servant of Saul's, and David made Ziba and his household the servants of Mephibosheth. We'll see how that happens in our outline. Two locations to point out on the map. First is Jerusalem. That's where David was reigning from. Now, Mephibosheth was living in a place called Lo-Debar, which is just to the south of the Sea of Galilee on the east side of the Jordan River. Now, our outline is at the top of page 2, just one section, verses 1 through 13. David shows kindness to Mephibosheth. That's what chapter 9 is all about. Before their deaths, David had made promises to Saul and Jonathan that he would care for their families. So he was intent on doing that. David called Ziba, who had previously been a servant of Saul, and asked him if any of the descendants of Saul, the children, the relatives of Saul, were still alive. Ziba told him that a son of Jonathan named Mephibosheth was still alive. And as we mentioned in the character section, he is described as being crippled in his feet because of an accident that occurred when he was young. David called Mephibosheth to him, and he blessed him. And he gave Mephibosheth, it's not the easiest name to say, he gave Mephibosheth the estate that had previously belonged to Saul, and he invited him to eat at the king's table, essentially for the rest of his life. So David made sure that he was cared for, that his promises were kept to his good friend Jonathan. In addition to that, Ziba, who had 15 sons and 20 servants, they were entrusted with the job of cultivating Mephibosheth's land, probably to some degree because he was a man with limited physical capabilities, Mephibosheth, that is. And so that is chapter 9 of 2 Samuel. We will discuss Mephibosheth again and Ziba again. They'll come up in another chapter related to Absalom, one of David's sons. Now for our application section. Men and women of God keep their promises even when there isn't any personal benefit. Saul and Jonathan at this point were dead, and apparently it seems like most of the kingdom had pretty much forgotten about Mephibosheth, especially if David didn't know about him. But David still went out of his way to honor the promises that he had made. And this act required something of David. It required his time, his energy, his mental focus, his land, and his money. David's word was worth something. He had given it to his friend. He intended on keeping it, and our word should be worth something as well. David's character reflects the character of Jesus in these actions. Jesus sacrificed to uphold the promises of God, and like David, he did it at personal expense for the benefit of other people. So the application is, when we keep our word, we also reflect the character of Jesus, and that's why it's important to keep the promises that we make to other people.